For 2,500 years, one story has been told over and over again as the ultimate heroic last stand. It's a tale of insane odds, of unbelievable courage, and a sacrifice that really did change the course of history. So, let's get into it. What really went down at the pass they called the Hot Gates? Okay, first, just look at these numbers. Seriously. On one side, you have this tiny alliance of Greek cities, and they managed to scrape together about 7,000 soldiers. And on the other, you've got the Persian Empire, the biggest army the world had ever seen, led by King Xerxes. We're talking somewhere around 200,000 men. That means the Greeks were outnumbered at least 25 to 1. On paper, this isn't a battle, it's a slaughter. And yet, when a Persian scout sneaks a look at the Greek camp, he doesn't see an army shaking in its boots. He sees the Spartans, the leaders of this whole enterprise, just calmly exercising, combing their long hair. He reports back to Xerxes, who thinks it's completely laughable. But what he didn't get was that this wasn't about looking good. It was a ritual. This is how Spartans prepared to die. So how in the world did these two armies end up facing off in this tiny little pass? Well, to really get the battle, we have to understand the war. We need to look at why Persia, the global superpower of its day, decided to launch this mind-bogglingly huge invasion in the first place. You see, this whole thing didn't just pop up out of nowhere. There was bad blood here. It really kicked off decades earlier when some Greek cities in what's now Turkey revolted against Persian rule, and Athens helped them out. So about 10 years later, Xerxes' father, Darius, sent a force to punish Athens. But he was handed this absolutely stunning, humiliating defeat at a place called Marathon. So this invasion, this massive army, this was Xerxes' response. This was payback, meant to finish the job and wipe away the shame of Marathon for good. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about two totally different ways of seeing the world. Xerxes planned to just swallow up all these scrappy, independent Greek city-states and make them part of his enormous empire. His goal was to crush their defiance so completely that no one would ever dare challenge Persia again. And for the Spartans, well, this fight felt like it was written in the stars. The Oracle of Delphi, the most respected voice of the gods in the whole Greek world, had given their King Leonidas a truly chilling choice. The prophecy said either Sparta itself would be destroyed, or a Spartan king had to die. So when Leonidas marched his men north, he absolutely knew, he was probably going to be the one to fulfill that prophecy. Facing these kinds of odds, the Greeks knew they couldn't win a straight-up fight. It would be suicide. So they didn't even try. Their entire strategy, everything, hinged on one single thing: geography. They decided to make their stand right here at Thermopylae. The name literally means the hot gates because of some hot sulfur springs nearby. At the time, it was an incredibly narrow choke point. Imagine sheer, unclimbable mountains on one side and the sea crashing up against the other. It was a natural bottleneck. And that geography was the great equalizer. That narrow pass was a perfect funnel. Suddenly, Persia's huge numbers didn't matter because they could only attack with a few men at a time. Their cavalry, which they were famous for, was totally useless. The place was basically custom-made for the Greek way of fighting. And that way of fighting was the hoplite phalanx. Think of it as a human tank. It's a super dense formation, guys packed shoulder to shoulder, their shields overlapping to create a solid wall of bronze with a forest of deadly spear points sticking out. If you're charging that thing head-on in a tight space, you're going to have a very bad day. It was a literal meat grinder. But there was a catch. A potential weakness. Leonidas found out from the locals that there was a hidden mountain trail that could be used to get around his position and attack from the rear. He wasn't about to ignore that, so he sent 1,000 soldiers from an allied city, Phocis, to go up there and guard it. So for 4 days, Xerxes just waited. He was convinced this tiny little Greek force would see his massive army and just turn and run. They didn't. So finally, he ordered the attack, and the battle began. For 2 solid days, the impossible happened. The Greeks held. The Persians threw wave after wave of soldiers at them, and they just broke against the shield wall. Xerxes even sent in his elite troops, the 10,000 immortals, and they got thrown back with huge losses. But then came the betrayal. A local guy named Ephialtes, hoping to get rich, went to Xerxes and told him all about that secret mountain path. By the morning of the 3rd day, it was over. The Greeks were surrounded.
Before the fighting even started, a Persian messenger came with a simple demand from Xerxes. Hand over your arms.
And Leonidas's reply? Well, it's become one of the most famous lines in military history. Molon labe. Basically, come and get them. And that defiant spirit ran through all the Spartans. There's this great story where someone warned a Spartan named Dianakes that the Persians had so many archers, their arrows would block out the sun, and he supposedly just shot back, "Good, then we'll fight in the shade." I mean, who even thinks like that? So once Leonidas learned he'd been outflanked, he made the call. He told most of the Greek army to retreat, to get out of there so they could live to fight another day. But he and his 300 Spartans were staying. So were a group of Thebans. And here's the incredible part. 700 soldiers from a city called Thespiae refused to leave. They chose to stay and die with the Spartans. What came next was a brutal fight to the very last man. But the story of Thermopylae doesn't end with their deaths. Actually, its true power is all about what happened next. Now let's be clear, the Persians won. It was a tactical victory. They took the pass. The Greek force was wiped out, about 4,000 casualties. But the price they paid was enormous. Herodotus claims the Persians lost something like 20,000 men. For the very first time, someone had made the mighty Persian Empire bleed, and the shock of seeing their best soldiers get absolutely butchered was huge. And in the immediate aftermath, things looked terrible for Greece. The path was open. The Persian army just poured south. They marched all the way to Athens, which had been evacuated, and they burned the city to the ground. And yet, that sacrifice had a purpose. It sent a message to the rest of Greece. The Persians can be beaten. They can be hurt. The story of Leonidas and his men became this incredible rallying cry. It helped forge a sense of unity among all these bickering Greek cities, uniting them against this one massive threat like nothing had before. Later, a monument was put up on the battlefield. The inscription on it is just so simple and haunting. It reads, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. It's all about duty, right to the very end." And the men that Leonidas saved? They didn't let his sacrifice go to waste. That delay at Thermopylae bought the Greek alliance critical time to get their act together. Just 1 year later, a huge, unified Greek army faced the Persians again at the Battle of Plataea. And this time, they didn't just hold their ground, they won. They crushed the Persian army and ended the invasion for good. So that leaves us with this incredible question. This paradox. Was Thermopylae a disastrous defeat that just led to Athens getting burned? Or was it the most successful failure in history, a calculated sacrifice that made the final victory possible, and in doing so, created one of the most powerful ideas in Western culture, that free people would rather die fighting on their feet than live bowing on their knees?